Раз, два, три. Уважаемые дамы и господа, через несколько минут начнется
Esteemed
пленарное
ladies and
заседание
gentlemen, we are starting the plenary session of the 12th Russian Energy Forum. You are kindly requested to take your seats in the conference hall and be sure to switch off your mobile phones.
Уважаемые дамы и господа, через несколько минут
Esteemed ladies and gentlemen, the plenary session of the Russian International Energy Forum is starting any time from now. You are kindly requested to take your seats in the conference hall and be sure to switch off your mobile phones.
Уважаемые дамы и господа, приветствую участников пленарного заседания 12-го Российского международного
attendees of the
энергетического
12th Russian International Energy
Алексей
Forum are welcome.
Васильевич Ересько,
Mr.
заместитель
Alexei
министра строительства
Yereska,
и жилищно-коммунального хозяйства
Deputy
Российской
Minister
Федерации.
of Construction Industry, Housing and the Utilities Sector of the
Борис
Russian Federation.
Михайлович Гладких, депутат
Mr. Boris
Государственной Думы
Gladkih,
Федерального собрания Российской Федерации,
Deputy of the
член
State
Комитета
Duma, Federal Assembly
Государственной
of the
Думы
Russian
по
Federation,
энергетике.
member of the State Duma Committee on
Игорь
Energy,
Анатольевич Кузьмин,
Mr.
генеральный
Igor
директор
Kuzmin,
публичного акционерного
CEO,
общества Россети
Rosseti
Ленэнерго.
Lenenergo,
Руслан Николаевич
Mr.
Пахомов,
Ruslan
заместитель генерального
Pahomov,
директора, руководитель
Deputy
дивизиона
General Director and
теплоэнергетики
Head of the
акционерного
Thermal
общества
Power
«Силовые
Division
машины».
of Power Machines,
Владимир Владимирович
Mr. Vladimir
директор
Tupikin,
по энергетике
Head
и
of Energy and
ресурсобеспечению
Resources
акционерного
at
общества
Sibur Holding,
член наблюдательного
member
совета
of
Ассоциации
Supervisory
НП Совета
Board
рынка,
of
член
Association
правительственной комиссии по
NP
вопросам
Market
развития
Council,
электроэнергетики.
member of the Government Committee for Electric Energy Development,
Директор Ассоциации развития
Mr.
возобновляемой
Alexei
энергетики, генеральный
Zhikarev,
директор МСОЛ.
Director, Renewable Energy Development Association,
Модератор
CEO
пленарного
at
заседания,
ENSOL,
генеральный директор Фонда
the
национальной
moderator
энергетической
of the
безопасности
plenary
Константин
session
Васильевич
meeting
Симонов.
is Mr. Konstantin Simonov, CEO of
Уважаемый
National
Константин
Energy
Васильевич,
Security Fund.
Спасибо большое.
Mr. Simonov, the floor is all yours. Thank you. Welcome to the plenary session of the forum. We are starting a bit earlier, which is unusual for the plenary meetings. I think Vladimir is not with us. That's why he is not with us, but he will join us shortly. We will have more time for the discussion, and I would like to congratulate the attendees and organizers on the 10th anniversary. That's quite a substantial jubilee, and I hope that it's not the last one, and I hope that this forum will be interesting and formidable. Vladimir, please join us. Hard to believe, but we have started already. So, Vladimir Tupikin has been introduced already, and he is with us. So we are all fit and tight. We can start. Many things to discuss. We are in new, both political and economic reality. We witness the modifications that the Russian economy has been subjected to, and energy sector is the blood system of the economy, and economy development is not possible without the proper operation of the energy sector in any country, and to say nothing about Russia, because in Russia energy sector plays a pivotal role. It's not just a sector, but it is a backbone industry, and it is a matter of concern of all of us, at least as consumers of energy. Of course, there are sanctions imposed on the energy sector, just like other sectors. I think this is one of the most important subject matters to talk about. We can see the economic growth rate is quite high. It means that there is a high demand for energy, and it will be interesting to see how the industry sector will cope with it. We have a drop in export, which on one hand reduces the profits, and we will talk about it today, but on the other hand, there is a possibility to forward, to channel the generated energy to the domestic market. Traditionally, there are many issues related to the pricing, to the costs, to the tariffs for electrical power and heat energy, and today we will cover these issues with the help of the panelists. Besides, there are a lot of legislative initiatives, there are a lot of bills and laws that have been taken to the State Duma. We will talk about the codes and regulations as well. Let us start the first part of the questions, and by the way, today there won't be long presentation. We will have a discussion. And the first part is on the status on the technical status of the industry and import substitution. We understand the energy sector was actually the first one to be under sanctions, and let us discuss how the sector is prepared to provide energy supply and commodities to the Russian economy. So the technical status of the industry, import substitution, is one of the questions that we should start with Mr. Yereska. I would like to give you the floor on this sensitive issue. So what do you think about it? What's the technical status of the industry, and how are we dealing with import substitution? Thanks, Konstantin. And I think it is absolutely right for the Ministry of Construction Industry to take part in this meeting. I will have another session. And the utility sector and energy sector are intertwined. We have a joint session with the Ministry of Energy. We interact with the industrial committees, energy committee, and it stands to reason because the major consumers of the services that are provided by the utility sector and the energy sector are the citizens, the people of our country. And the mindset of the people depends on how well these sectors work. Talking about heat generation sector, more than 18,000 facilities operate in the country. Some of them are co-generation units, some are providers of heat energy, and jointly with the Territory Development Fund, we monitor the operation of these utility facilities, and they update their infrastructure annually, and high on the agenda is the comprehensive program of development and refurbishment of the utility sector, and it includes the refurbishment of the energy component. Talking about the grids, there are more than 5,000 networks, and 500,000 out of these 500,000 kilometers. Let me give you the exact figure: 575,000. These are the water supply networks, and 200,000 are water disposal networks. And there's a lot of wastewater disposal. So there are some accidents during the winter season, and it is the indirect sign of what the status it is. So we monitor the networks, and we can see that 42% of the networks need replacement. The rate of replacement, as a result of all the operations overhaul and the work performed by the Ministry of Energy is approximately 2% of the capacity per year. And at that, the networks are getting obsolete at the rate of 3%. So if we fail to take the drastic measures, then the percentage of the networks that will have to be replaced will be growing. So that's why the comprehensive refurbishment program of the utility sector has been put forward, and the President has set a task by 2030 to allocate 4.5 trillion rubles for the refurbishment program. And there is a need not to address the issue through budget allocations only. And I can switch over to your next question about the investment attractiveness of the sector. Unfortunately, only 10% of the resource-providing organizations have investment programs. At that, the investment programs that do exist are implemented by 80% only, 80%. What it means is that the market is not attractive for investors. As a result of the consultations and discussions, there are different opinions put forward, and some kind of solutions will be provided. We might change the law on concessions, the law on heat energy supply to the consumers, and the amendments to the laws might attract private business investments into the utility sector. Because when we talk about the financing of the industry, it's 6 trillion rubles needed. That's a huge money in this sector. 2 million people, that's the head count of the workers in the utility sector. And for the program to be fulfilled by 2030, it is necessary to develop and to offer the tools, the leverage that might attract the investors. We are vigorously discussing the issues with our colleagues from the Ministry of Energy, talking about the law on concessions and on the law on supply of the heat energy. And businesses should realize that their involvement is crucial and it is important. And I can see the representative of the Ministry of Construction Industry, and sometimes they word out, they say that they are not interested in developing the investment programs, though they do invest using other tools. And but it is necessary to attract the wide droves of the organizations and the entities to refurbish the industry to make it more energy efficient and more productive. That's the work ongoing now at different levels, and I have mentioned the stakeholders that are involved in this work. Talking about the import substitutions. And it goes without saying that it is not possible to develop the industry without producing the equipment that is needed. It's not possible to use the 400.5 trillion rubles. And it's necessary to produce the equipment, the networks is linear line networks is not the only thing. The boiler houses, equipment are important, to say nothing about electronics, frequency converters and inverters and the other types of equipment. Talking about the boiler houses equipment, luckily the equipment and the designs that has been developed at the time of the Soviet Union were not lost, and there are manufacturers producing equipment both for cogeneration units and for the boiler houses. I will not be giving the name, not to do the sales talk, and we are now doing the refurbishment of the equipment at Baikonur space launching pad. Pumping equipment, we did have some problems after the sanctions were imposed initially, and we have registered the fact that even when the design and engineering solutions to use the domestic equipment were used, we did manage to fulfill the terms of the duration, the timing of the construction. And talking about the utilities, we should talk about the sewage and wastewater disposal equipment, which are important for the livelihood in the cities. And the water companies cooperate with the enterprises that belong to the energy sector. Initially, they were marking time, and they were hesitant as to what they should do. There was a shortage of the equipment, imported equipment for the wastewater treatment system, but the industry, the domestic industry picked up their rate of development, and as far as the sludge drying equipment has been produced by the domestic enterprises, and the first shock of the sanctions is not with us anymore. The enterprises got adapted, and more than that, all the industries, energy sector and the utility sector have an impetus for the development.
Thanks a lot. I think that the investment topic is related to the cost of services and electrical power supply, water supply, energy supply, and we'll discuss that in a separate way. Alexei, you sort of intimidated me when you said that we are blessed for not having Soviet made technology, but we are more than 3 decades after. I think we need new technologies, new domestic technologies. I have got the energy utilities professional background, that utilities equipment which had been designed in Soviet Union era, and I keep coming to Moscow Energy Institute, my alma mater, and I think that the wonderful basis was embedded back then. Of course, we will not discard that. Boris Mikhailovich, floor is yours. I have a request, but please speak under the analyst's hat. Speak about it from that standpoint, because later on you may speak under the hat of a legislator. But now, what's your take on it as the researcher, the analyst? What's your take as to the sector current status? It should not be average. There is a heat supply, energy supply, different thermal reformings, and there are directions for reform in each and every sector here. Gas also, or natural gas. This is one of the components of the utilities and housing sector when it comes to using gas throughout the territory of Russian Federation. This is very important for us as well, mindful of what consumer expects from us: quality, reliability, robustness. Amid contemporary conditions, even we reiterate one and the same thing. There we go, time after time again. We encounter situations whereby we cannot possibly impact the situation related to a specific organization or the assets which are concentrated as a complex of property. There are municipal and regional levels of authorities. They all should be gearing towards catering for the interests of our citizens, our consumers. We should enhance robustness, transparency, and President makes a very important point that digitalization would be a very important driver encouraging the economy in future and energy as well, of course, mindful of analytical tools. We have to be in line with the request of investors. We cannot always do that when sometimes capacity is sort of disrupted, or we cannot make use of that capacity or reserve capacity. Those who are going to make use of that electrical equipment having only commercial gains in mind when they purchase the capacity, and they are holding them until the market turns that way, so there will be upside, the price will be high, they could sell. They should do something, be socially responsible businesses. For rank and file consumers, it's good, it's appealing when we are saying that this is the company with state ownership, and we're doing a lot of different things for the sake of customers. But there we go again. We keep saying that there is more than 60% depreciation in the equipment. But still we should do that. If you're in a military field, you wouldn't drop the tank saying it's old, I don't want to use it anymore, and off you go. You'd never do that. So we should do something with the equipment, even if it's outdated, it's obsolete. People come and go, and at some moment of time, we have been striving to upscale the degree of our responsibility and to higher engagement and involvement of the state in managing this sphere, this sector, because at the end of the day, we don't want to leave our consumer in a dire strait. Even given the situation we have got with emergency rates and accident rates in thermal supply sector, and although it's not very high, but there are dozens, 100,000 citizens of Russian Federation, SMEs, different companies which are dependent on that, and then who will offset the damage provided there is a failure of the equipment or whatever. So this is the modern trend, enhancement of the state-owned shares, because we keep complaining that so many things are bad in our sector, but we should roll up our sleeves and start doing something. Of course, we should upscale this disclosure rate of the information. We should be transparent. That's about analytical part, or my analyst hat, as to my deputy's hat, so to put it, or deputy's capacity. State Duma committee responds to those challenges, and at the level of the chair of the State Duma, Vyacheslav Volodin, there are some decrees and guidelines. A task force was set up. It's headed by the deputy chairman of State Duma, Mr. Gordiev. And out there, we discuss all those issues of enhancing robustness and reliability of the sphere of utilities housing sector. We had 2 aggregated sessions, and the deliverables of that work are also the efforts on behalf of the government of Russian Federation, because we keep contacts with supervisory agencies, federal level executive authorities, different federal entities. We have been gearing towards the reform in the sphere of thermal supply and the operators of the grids, and we are encountered by criticism on behalf of some of the market participants. But along with that, we think that this is very promising direction. We discussed those issues a short while ago with the Minister of Energy. And I myself, as a deputy of State Duma and as an analyst, I welcome all those developments because we're fully aware that it's extremely challenging to cope with all the problems. We should do it only by a joint endeavor. We should not shirk the responsibility from one deputy or to another, or one boss of the company to another. So the reform should be there, and we should retrofit what falls flat, and parliamentary supervision is important control as well. We're going to streamline a set of tools which will give us a hand in reforms, mindful of import substitution. How else could we possibly extract a net payload and net supplies using investments, to develop a domestic market unless we change something? We should create a win-win situation. We should come up with guarantees for new investors, for potential investors, to attract them more. As regards the changes in the system of thermal heat distribution, there are very ambitious tasks within the energy of Ministry of Energy of Russian Federation. And also there will be a session at 2 o'clock. We'll discuss that, so I'm not going to steal my colleague's show. So now I'll just mention it briefly. There is a draft law covering different problems and challenges as to the energy modernization, energy retrofitting, energy efficiency issues did not enter that draft law. So we decided that they should be there. So we criticize the first reading of that draft law. Thank you. We'll discuss more of that draft law. But you were quite right by saying that there we go, time after time again, for 20 whole years, that utilities housing sector is like the black hole with very high degree of depreciation. But nobody quits that sector. Nobody pulls out. It's vital yet. It's living and breathing. And there is another segment which is closer to energy, although they say there is the highest depreciation, investment crunch. The grids. Today we have a wonderful opportunity to listen to the opinion of one of the heads or the head of one of the largest regional grid companies, Igor Anatolyevich. What's your take on grid complex of Russian Federation? Thanks a lot for your question. At the outset, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to the organizers, profile Governor of St. Petersburg and Sergei Nikolaevich as well, for that post-session we opened up dedicated to great deeds of energy specials amid World War II, amid the blockade in Leningrad, an energy blockade. Leningrad energy system is the city's oldest. It dates back to 1886. So the problem of the grids having very high life cycle and which are depreciated is a very important problem. But nonetheless, Leningrad energy power grid system is glorious because of its traditions. and best practices were born there, which then showcased the great success for around the entire country. And we've always felt a helping hand and support of regional federal entities, and our shareholder capital is such that it's state-owned chunk, the state, which is very big. Our city company is state-owned, and almost 30% of shareholding belongs to the government of St. Petersburg. Such an equity structure envisages partnership-based relations with tariff authorities and with the government on the establishment of that level, reliability and robustness, which consumer would like to see. The depreciation level is about 50%, which is not altogether the worst statistics. The regions of the presence of our company are economically well developed. They are aware how important energy sector is for the region, for the life activity of the region, and they always support us whenever we are going to enhance the robustness level. And this is all about investment highlights and operational costs incurred by the company. It's sort of a trade-off or based on agreement. Regulations on energy on the grids, and the grids were constructed in line with the regulation, so the electrical energy supply disruption was possible for 24 hours. Today's attitude of consumers is entirely different. So we are in quest for a trade-off between the optimal level of tariffs established by the region with the maximum efficiency use of operational and other costs which are embedded in the tariffs for energy, electrical power supply. Just by one example, our production program on technical maintenance and repair, according to the state program, is about 5 billion rubles, 2.8 St. Petersburg, 2.4 Leningrad region. Investment program is split in different proportion. Higher volume, 32 billion for St. Petersburg and about 13 billion Leningrad region.
This enables us to conduct the activity to maintain and service more than 120 cable lines in the city, thousands of transformer stations, and the total length of the network is more than 80,000 kilometers. It is actually more than two lengths of an equator of the Earth, and it calls for our concerted efforts, thanks to the interaction that is ongoing. We maintain the stoppage time, the average stoppage time, 47 minutes and 90 minutes in the Leningrad Oblast due to the specificity of the rural areas. There are some specific issues that we address with respect to the investments, but they fall into the brackets of the investments. Indeed, there was a certain emphasis regarding the technical connection of those who have a special status, but thanks to the Legislative Assembly activity and our parent company, there are favorable changes, and I would like to thank to colleagues from the State Duma, those who make it possible to pursue a well-balanced policy, because client orientation, customer orientation are not just blank words. Customers they assess us by the level of the customer satisfaction level, and we understand what the necessity what we should do, what is necessary to do, and I don't think it is worth to praise the regional authorities, but we are maintaining the level of reliability, and we are a socially responsible company in this respect. I think the balance of the interests of the company and that of the customers is maintained, and we are striving to have a higher quality of the services that we provide. There's always room for perfection, though. We will continue along the same lines. Thank you. I agree. If there's no light, you can explain it to the customer that you can wrap equator twice with your wires. The Kommersant paper has an addendum, annex, and it's about us. I would like to quote something. And you will understand the reason why I decided to quote. The major challenge of the energy sector is dependence on the foreign technologies, and the electrical power sector is the lack of large power turbines and vanes and blades. So you realize why I have read it out. So what's the situation with the turbines in Russia? I can give you the gist of the information of what power machines are. It is the facility producing equipment for energy sector. We are producing the turbines up to 1200 megawatts. It is high rate and low revolution turbines. We produce boilers and heat exchangers, electrical motors, electrical generators, and we have started producing gas turbines as well. Historically, we have been manufacturing steam turbines, but gas turbines is a new technology that we have mastered, related to your question about the technological independence of Russia and import substitution. Since time immemorial, from the 30s of the 20th century, Russia has been designing and engineering gas turbines for air jets, though. But first 100 megawatt gas turbine was produced in Russia in the 30s, and the first 5 largest gas turbines have been produced at the Russian Mechanical Works. 3 of them have been installed in Hungary, and 3 of them in the Moscow region. But this technology at the time of the Soviet Union, because of the low gas prices, was not developed after the privatization of the United Energy System. Most of the projects were based on the Siemens, GE, Mitsubishi gas turbines, because it is known that the gas turbines produce the energy at the productivity of 52%, and the cycles have the production rate of some 35. So the average productivity of gas is 40–45%. And this helped us to update the power generation, and over this period of time, since 2007 to 2012, the landscape of the suppliers has changed considerably, because machine engineering is not only up to the facility, but the network of the suppliers, including steel producers, those suppliers that produce components and packaging, and we are at the pinnacle of the process chain, and we integrate everything, all the efforts into the piece of equipment that can produce energy. And since 2007, when the Russian machine builders did not have a lot of tasks, the network of the suppliers has technologically degraded. And when there was a resurrection of the production of the gas turbines in 2019, we had a pathetic situation when not all the suppliers could provide the required quality and quantity of the components. And there are a number of the programs available for the development of the gas turbines now to produce the production yards, etc. There are no productive commercial projects now. It is only through budget allocations that new capacity is being built, and it is necessary to meet the requirements of governmental degree of 719. It depends on the level of localization. As far as gas turbine is concerned, the level of localization should not be less than 90%. At that, the components to be produced locally are listed. It is chamber, vanes, blades, PCS, and the other. These are the major components, quite critical, and the technology should be state-of-the-art. Since the blades and vanes are produced only for the aviation industry in this country, a decision was taken to make investments. That's why the Power Machines have established its own workshop for production of vanes and blades. There are no similar productions. We cast blades, then we machine them, we coat them with the thermal coatings, and all this is done at the workshop for two types of the gas turbines. One is 170 series. It is FAL 92 converted, and another is GT 77 megawatts that will be offered for the market. There are 12 turbines that are under construction, and all of these turbines meet the requirements of the Decree 719. So we can state that we produced 12 first turbines with 100% localization. I would like to remind you of the programs that are in existence to support the modernization of the industry. And we depend on the orders of the industry a lot, and there is certain discontinuity in the orders, though it is important for us for the products with a long lead time. It takes 30 months to produce gas turbines, and it is important for us to have a long-term program of development of the generation capacity, and we should have the book of orders, and in this case we will be ready to invest into the production. As an example, in 2023 and 24, we made investments for both the steam turbines and the generators, and we increased the investment by 50%. And as I mentioned, we have established the production of blades and vanes, and all these we are continuously refurbishing the production facilities, and a lot of money is needed. And in order to develop new technologies, to refurbish the existing one, it's necessary to understand that our produce will be demanded by the industry. China can give us an example, and all the consumers can see motor vehicles. Less people can see the turbines or aircraft, but they are there for the very reason that the state has a long-term program of development. Not a single foreign company could enter the market and sell their products without establishing a joint venture and localizing their production in China. So I think it's up to us now to think about the long-term development program, because as a result of the sanctions introduction, the 30 megawatts turbines that are working, it is 30 gigawatt of generation that is needed to regulate the grid, and it is in jeopardy now, and we should not make the same mistakes which we had last century when Gazprom was under sanctions. So we should not make the same mistake today. We should develop the generation capacity on our own. So you started with your success, but you have scared us at the end. Vladimir, you are a top manager of one of the major consumers of energy, and I am sure you have your own opinion about this issue. The floor is yours. Thank you. And thanks to the organizers, and thanks for posing the questions. And I am happy that I have a chance to have my talk not in the beginning, but after my colleagues had their say, and I can react to what they have mentioned. I cannot but start with the historical anecdote and then hear what it's all about. And we analyzed the list of the equipment that was installed in the 70s, and we have come to the conclusion that 45% of the generation capacity in the Russian Federation, which was inherited, which is a legacy of the Soviet Union, need a replacement, and it's not even refurbishment, not upgrade, but it is full-fledged replacement due to wear and tear of the equipment.
Very straightforward calculations tell us that, and we mentioned those values before. Until 2050, we'll have to substitute of 90 gigawatt worth of energy equipment. It's important to be aware that this replacement will not be done only by using gas turbine installations and steam power units as well, because you live in cold climatic conditions, which I was convinced of just one more time this very cold morning. So we need thermal energy in those 90 gigawatt. The entire range of generation is embedded. And of course, it's common knowledge that there is sort of a habit which we should somehow implement, the habit of doing investments into generation, thus somehow damaging the expectations of our customers, because we'll have to find more than 330 trillion ruble on top of that in order to come up with lifeline tariff. And we're fully aware that for our industry to make such an investment will be rather difficult on the one hand. On the other hand, we also are fully aware that any investment whatsoever in the sector of electrical power, electrical energy, will return to consumers in services, in goods, with the apprehension of the tariff. They'll have to pay more for it. But we should do all that work, but we should also elaborate the approach to that, or we should redefine the approach. That generation, which was part of the USSR, was constructed with the help of the state, so we should seek state co-funding of projects. Like one of the examples is the Eastern testing range. That's where we do need no generation, no grid construction to upscale the production and for transit flows eastwards. Let's take as an example Rossetti. It's absolutely necessary to make those investments. Moreover, from the standpoint of regulation, tariffs of distribution grids were within the frameworks of investment growth, where this money could come from. We used to set forward different suggestions without the downscaling of the share of the state in the package of the grid company. It's possible to do it via maybe extra issuance, or also outreaching the institutes of financial state finance to other financial institutions to exercise this ambitious program. And by the same token, Minister of Energy made a clear stand that for retrofitting of hydropower plant, part of the investments could be channeled by the state for a dam, for example. But as to generation equipment and all the rest, quite conventional via consumer payments, we know the mechanisms and the ways to attract investment. These are the agreement for power capacity supplies. And we're fully aware of the problem identified by our colleagues. There are challenges not for that sector of electrical power energy. It's about unparalleled sanctions, so we're not able not only to buy foreign-made equipment, but we are not able to maintain it as well, to exercise the maintenance. We try to do everything we can to cope with the situation, but from within we'll need an extra set of tools in order to fund the increasing gap and disparity and deferred effects from the decisions which were already taken on board. Now it's all about extending and expanding the mechanisms and the range of those investments via investment agreements. Investment contract concept has been devised by the stakeholders from the market, and we also participated in the development of this mechanism. Those investment contracts will enable us to be within market relations and to have a direct contract between a consumer and generating company for the construction of the necessary capacity volumes. First, maybe it will be the construction of different utilities working on renewables. We are probing into that because in the Far East there is a growing crunch of not just electrical power capacity and duty, but also the electrical supply. System operator says it's up to 1.5 gigawatt of the electrical power energy, and then such investment contracts could be used in the sphere of construction of conventional gas generation units. I guess I would finish at that. Of course, there are some extra idea as to which way we should be gearing towards. You'll be able to speak more. Yes, but we just highlighting the challenges, and let's carry through with our discussion. No problem. Alexei Borisovich, you're one of most bespoke lobbyists of green energy in Russia. I have a question for you. It's common knowledge that it's very now to talk and to use global green energy. It came along from Western world. The global South countries also are discussing that. In Russia, from the standpoint of import substitution, what is the situation? Because first, foreign companies were coming along to our market as to renewables energy. Are they the exemplar mode of import substitution? Thank you very much for having been provided the floor as well, and I appreciate sharing my ideas with you. But first of all, I would like to recap and provide my feedback in relation to what you said, like I'm the lobbyist of green energy. Very important event happened for the renewables energy. The amount of lobbyists of green energy scaled up drastically in our country. In this year, just my colleague sitting next to me supports all that because there are very drastic changes in the economy, and our topic is entitled The Challenges and Contemporary Conditions as to the tender on competition on supply of power energy supply. And so now it crossed our minds that renewables could rescue us in the current situation when there is an accelerated growth of electrical capacity consumption. And what does it mean for us? Several years back from now, when we were designing the program for modernization of thermal stations, we were working on new master plans and new strategies, and everybody was looking at the 1% of forecasted growth of consumption. They thought it was most optimistic scenario, but in point of fact, the working scenario was 0.6, 0.7 annual. Now we see 2% and even more. It could be up to 4% increment quarterly, mindful of also climatic factors. The average life cycle of thermal plants is about 45 years. By 2040, by 2035, it will reach 45 years. That impacts the average bituminous fuel consumption because we stepped up energy consumption, overloading low efficiency power plants, which aggravates the situation with carbon footprint, because this environmental agenda is still there. It's hovering over us. And so we have been gearing towards low carbon energy. We're most interested to really do that, notwithstanding the change in directions of the export one way or the other. In all the targeted market, this zero carbonization, or at least low carbonization, is very important. I would like to underscore the fact that there are very big changes. We have been redefining everything. When they say that there are no commercial projects, but there is a wholesale market which is yet alive, and there are two different segments there: electrical power supply, electrical capacity. It's not possible to procure new projects. Something will be changing, I think, because all of a sudden everybody, regulator and system operator, became aware suddenly that due to import substitution, we have got problems with also electrical hardware and maintenance of it, so it's a very big shortfall of electrical capacity as well. And for us not to be in dire strait from the standpoint of carbon and CO2 and so on, we should invest more into low carbon environment-friendly technologies. Thanks to that program of the support of the renewable sources of energy, we have accumulated competences and technological competences as well. And of course, solar energy and others are quite popular here in Kaliningrad. There is a very big factory production of the silicon cells and plates for solar energy plates. It's about 1 gigawatt. So these are the capacities we already have. So the ability to proactively develop along those lines, which is very economical and feasible because it's very low cost. And if you look at different co-generation, there are different formations, and colleagues will correct me if I'm wrong as to the tender. The volume was about 1.5 gigawatt, and only half of it was actually selected and taken out. Now there will be new tender with other levels of capital expenditures and capital investments. Maybe it will be 17 rubles. That remains to be seen. But that event, I think, should attract great attention of those who have a final say in formation of investment signals for way out into the future, and at least in those areas whereby we have got available range of regulations due to lots of plants and windmills, so we can invest into renewables because the prices are very competitive, even if we compare them versus small-scale hydropower plants. But they could not be possibly constructed every place. We should find special locations in different rivers. But as to wind and solar energy, we have got a vast stockpile in the Far East zones, which are now part of the list of those potential regions in the shortfall of power capacity. That would be showcase the promising nature of renewables to be taken on board and to help us until the year 2050. In line with the low carbon development strategy, it's about 100 gigawatt of the capacity. We have got all the conditions for that to be taken on board and to be operated quite smoothly. No strategic papers also take that into account because they had been drastically devised. Thank you very much. To recap on your bullet point about those contracts and this energy, renewables energy, let's talk about the cost of thermal energy and tariffs, because you're referring to necessary investments in the amount of 33 trillion at least. And of course, it would be way too simple to embed all that money into the tariff. But of course, consumer has got a drastically different opinion. Cross subsidies is an important issue too, and time after time again we're going back and forth about it for decades. The tariffs for population are by 30% lower. The industrialists are disconcerted, but there are lots of social implications and undertones which evolve that way. And consumers, industrial consumers, local residents, households are sort of dubious that maybe there would be a drastic growth of services and the cost of electrical power energy, thermal energy. Alexei, what's your take on it? Tariff as regulator, what we're to expect?
So it's a strange situation about the tariffs for utility services, heat as well. We have a parameter. It is customer payment index, and there is a limit index set up by the government, and it includes all the list of the tariffs for all the utility services and also the solid waste management from the households. And so we are the users of the information, and the antitrust agency has registered that the limit growth rate was set up at the value of 9% for the following year, and it happened last year. But we registered it that that kind of tariffs were not taken up, and there are some constituent entities that did not increase the tariffs versus the previous year. And in our opinion, that this is unused potential that could be taken up. That is the tool that the government can provide. And there are a number of reasons why there was no increase of the tariffs. And there is a program of the capital overhaul of the housing. And you are all paying it. And since 2013, when this program was established, this particular tariff was never increased since 2013, not a single time. But if we take inflation only, we know how much it has grown since, and besides, the prices for materials and for the work has increased as well. And we have a similar story for the tariffs for the utility sector. The government is treading carefully. They set the maximum limit for the higher tariffs, but even these tariffs are not increased. There are some constituent entities that they do request the government to have higher rise in the tariffs for utility sector services, and they provide the justification for that, their rationale. And it takes up to be bold for the governors of the constituent entities to assume the risks to have higher prices for the utilities. And at the same time, they give a chance to the resource-providing organizations to have enough money for investments. It stands to reason that in my first talk, I started talking about the infrastructure refurbishment program, because the results of the programs, the outcomes of the programs should be changes introduced into the tariffs policies. And the outcomes should be there not by 2030, but in the course of the reforms. I will not be talking specifically about the changes that we are discussing now, but it will not be possible to address this major challenge without major investments to overcome, to change the aging trend for the infrastructure. And the target which is included into the strategy of the utility sector development is replacement of the networks and equipment at the rate of 5% per year. Let me remind you that it is 2% now. own 2% only now. That's the situation with the tariffs, but I would like to emphasize it once again that even when there is a possibility to raise the tariffs, and where it is not possible to do without the cross tariffs, there is no hikes.
Well, I think it's maybe political expediency. So, Boris Mikhailovich, you heard what the executive authority representative is saying. There is a potential for tariff growth. What do you say as the voted for people's elected person? Well, if we see the signals from the executive authority that this sector has got the potential, then we're aware that there is some reserve to be used in future, so our consumers don't have to be disconcerted. A while ago, mass media coverage was maintaining that it's high time to shift to new ways of payment via electrical power energy for consumers, commercial tariffs, and the tariffs established for certain hours, intraday hours. We provided for our Julie feedback to that. We discussed this issue with the Minister for Energy. Our arguments were accepted and approved. So the point was, we tried to do it, but it falls flat. Well, a consumer is disgruntled. Let's not do that, or at least for a while. So we are probing into that situation from different angles. Of course, we would like to increase the situation in the industry. And if we're going to scale down cross-subsidies, which effect would you like to have from the economy? Which legal acts and bylaws have been taken on board related to that? As to energy balances, are we ready to understand which way that impacted energy? Because there should be feedback from the industry and the feedback from the regions. The notorious social norm for electrical power energy for 8 whole years. We had that. Now this issue was brought down to the level of the federal entities, and out of 18 regions to be covered by the experiment, only 6 are implementing this model, and that remains to be seen what would be the final effect, what we have been meaning to accomplish by that. Even economic effect, mindful of energy supplying organizations should be more transparent and traceable, although they say there are some pros, not only cons for that. Of course, there are benefits for that because this model is around for several years now under those models. By the same time as the retrofitting of the system of boiler houses and so on, our country is so huge, so there is no one-fit-all solution. And conditions when it's on a voluntary basis, not mandatory, we can find the beauty of this instrument. If we say that it's mandatory and everybody should do that, when we are over adamant about that, maybe we will not be able to analyze that. And some of the territories, like in rural areas, whereby life is more challenging, so households, consumers will get the wrong end of the deal, so to put it. As to the normalized consumption levels, I'm against such form of application. I'm in favor of tariff plans, but I, as a consumer, should be able to figure this out and to see that it's really beneficial for me. But just don't push me doing that, so I'll end up in a dire strait. We were part of the system of discussions, like there are different buildings, different dwellings, and in some of the dwellings we were told some of the landlords would be interested because the tariff would not be high for them because they live in old dilapidated building. But then it will be a new type of housing, of residential housing, so households would pay more inevitably. So there are lots of disparities, and the Ministry for Construction decided to shift the deadlines for introduction of those uniform tariffs. In the past, we had to break many bones with different authorities about this tariff, whether it's not due time to introduce that tariff. So finally, we found common ground, and everybody said, okay, we'll postpone it. We should bring it home to the executive authorities. Executive authorities are out there to cater for the interests of different sectors, different stakeholders. They should scrutinize the situation. But amid the current situation, we are sort of satisfied with this process, and we're hopeful that in future, by the same token, it will be a two-way street, so that there would be different discussion done. As to the overhaul, we made one big stride towards efficient use of households to stash for capital overhaul and capital refurbishment of multi-apartment high-rise buildings whereby households reside, and then we'll split it into different types of the capital refurbishment and overhaul that all the St. Petersburg buildings need. And our owners of those apartments should know what should be repaired. Sometimes it's only roofs and so on, but it's also about energy efficiency of the buildings. If the energy supply system is well adjusted and there is accounting for the energy consumption and energy meters installed in apartment houses, then we could have energy efficiency up to 30%. But service contracts, investment contracts do not work. They fall flat in the residential housing sector. It's very difficult to come to terms with local households. They are against it, and if it's a condominium, then they convene the meetings of the apartment owners, and sometimes they are strictly against this capital refurbishment of their apartments, capital overhaul of the buildings. But we should outreach households from large apartment houses also to meet utilities, managing companies, and there are some residential apartment management companies sometimes doing wrong things. That is why the households of those buildings sometimes are strictly against the capital refurbishment. As energy services for the residential apartment buildings are a very good tool, and we should explain the situation to the households so that it will be a win-win situation at the end of the day. I expanded upon the general approaches we have nowadays, and it's good altogether that jointly with Minister for Construction and Minister for Energy of Russian Federation we have been discussing them at all the venues of State Duma. And in conclusion, I'm here to say that a very important decision was made by President of Russian Federation Vladimir Putin about fostering good conditions to support utilities sector, housing sector. It's long awaited for presidential message to us, but the efficiency of using money out of the budget should be transparent. Digital model of our utilities housing sector is not obscure. Sometimes we provide for the funds to those who didn't take good care of their infrastructure, so they won't have any stimuli to work if they know that they would be given that money from the budget one way or the other. We should have more transparent digital model with all the money allocations. We don't wrap it up yet. Igor, what's about grid tariffs and connection payments?
Let me put it like that. As a representative of my organization, I can find a lot of arguments that the tariffs are not high enough for us to have higher reliability of the grids. But since we are a public company, the state-run company, and we understand what the tasks are, or take the issue of the cross tariffs, the regulators will set it, and there are a lot of factors involved to determine the value of it. There are certain expenses that the households are paying, and another factor is the social responsibility of the business that take up some of that spend the money to take up the subsidies, and those contributions should still retain the profitability of the business. And we do not like the situation when the large companies start their own generation in order to save money. And at the same time, the cross tariffs issue is getting more acute. It is not manifested, it might not manifest it that obviously, but in St. Petersburg, for example, or in the Leningrad Oblast, the decision was taken to exceed the tariffs, and anyway, the tariffs could be calculated based on the regulations. The reason why St. Petersburg is dealing with that is that the major consumers, the major producers transfer the energy to Lenenergo, and we, as a natural monopoly, we deal with the tariffs that the regulators set up in accordance with the Decree 35, and we operate based on the tariffs and try to spend in the most efficient manner all the money received from the customer. And Vladimir, I believe that you will be talking about the cross subsidies as well. And if we switch over from the higher tariffs for the citizens under the package of such fancy words as demand response, but at the same time providing incentives for the civil energy saving. We have touched upon this issue as well. So what's your idea about the cross subsidies of the tariffs? Let's talk about demand response first. It is a higher responsibility of consumers for the electrical energy consumption and the voluntary reduction of the consumption at peaks. And if this notion covers the population, which is not the case now, it's a good step, but the tariffs will be higher. Will it? It will not affect the tariffs, because whether the tariff is 100 rubles or it is 1 ruble, we will still have to go down on consumption. Let's talk about the cross tariffs now. The history of subsidies for the population is part of the paradigm that we exist in, and we think it is fair. But at the same time, there is a disparity, disproportion growing continuously. And the steps that the government is planning when the government is developing the differentiated tariffs concept might be one of the steps that will enable number of things to be done. It will first reduce the disproportion and disparity, and it will deny the use of the population tariffs by gray miners. And the task that we face now is to address this issue. Let us call it as it is, gray mining. The higher mining, the growth of mining, which is declared now from 1.5 to 2%, and it is consumption in the population sector, and we understand that the norm of energy consumption for all of us present in this conference hall is clear. We are living in the apartments, in the houses, and we know how much we pay for energy and at what tariffs. And when the household uses like 50,000 kilowatt hours, that is too excessive. It cannot be true. And the differentiation of the norm of consumption is one of the ways to address this issue. By the way, there will be a round table starting at 4 p.m. today. It will cover the issues of tariff differentiation depending on the volume of consumption. And I invite you to attend it, to discuss it. Besides the electrical energy tariffs, we face the tariff differentiation for gas consumption. And we suggest that unified tariffs should be used for industries and cogeneration for a number of reasons, because it confused the situation, whether the object of generation that could be part of the industrial manufacturer claim the reduced tariffs if they work at the wholesale industry and supply heat energy to the cities and towns. And I would like to remind you that there are some 12 gigawatt of generating capacity that the industrial enterprises have, and that's why this issue occurred. Right now, payment for gas is based on the economic activity code, and the problem that I have mentioned should be addressed, and we call upon these cross subsidies be leveled for the country to have a unified, a single tariff for gas. So these are the two ways to address the issue. Alexei, I have promised to still discuss your figures of the cost of renewables generation. And another question for you, strange as it might be. They say that renewables are cheap and quite competitive in terms of unit costs, and they can provide the prices lower than heat from the heat power plants. Let's take the southeast of Siberia. They have a certain problem. They have certain problems. Then, what is the obstacles on renewables companies to provide their services? And if the energy generated is cheap? And the question is simple. What is an obstacle for the heat HPP? The power plant did not come to the east of Siberia. They just were standing by, marking time till the program was adopted by the government. So that's why for the renewables generating companies, they have the same obstacles. And there is an initiative of the Ministry of Energy to reduce the threshold from 25 to 5 megawatts of generation capacity, and there was a discussion, and there are some consumers that have generation limits of 25, and there are support measures for renewables to compensate the losses in the grids, and the value is also 25 megawatts. So the question is just the same. It's the rules, the regulations of the market. And we are in an active phase of discussion with the Ministry of Energy and the system operator. That is to apply the program rules to the Far East, to allow generations on the summer generation functions. And if this is done, then the investors would demonstrate that these renewable technologies are competitive indeed versus the other technologies of heat generation. Do I understand you right that you are prepared to compete with the heat providing companies? Yes, we are taking part in the discussion on the terms and conditions of the bidding, of the tenders. That's right. Okay, not much time left, but we still can talk about the regulations. And we have touched upon the issue of a reduction of the threshold up to 5 megawatts. And there is another example, and Igor is present over here as well. It's what the Ministry of Energy submitted the projects on the setup of the Institute of Energy Grid companies. So what's your position as a legislator that you will be having these wars? Initially, I would like to comment on what was mentioned. I think we should be careful when talking about the plans of the government on differentiation. The ladies and gentlemen of the press are present and they can make it public. Like saying, okay, ladies and gentlemen, we will be doing the measurement and we will be introducing the differentiation tariffs. Not yet. And if we do not develop the regulations first, and if we start saying that we need differentiation, that would be wrong. We should still develop the regulations to identify the connected capacities, constraints, and limits, etc. And so we should still treat differently, for example, the agricultural sector and the entities that are involved in mining. Regarding the bills and laws that have been taken to the State Duma, indeed, the above-mentioned laws have been handed over to the State Duma. There is groundwork for the first reading. We have received a lot of criticism, both the legislators and the government, it is related to the enlargement of the market, and it would result in the reduction of the small businesses, but the goal is to set up conditions for managing the energy market, to increase the responsibility, and we are trying to start to make the digitalization of the industry and to transfer the infrastructure to the regional level, to have a higher reliability of the generation and to understand how efficient we are in managing the industry. As far as the grid companies are concerned, all of them will be offered to get diversified, because the state is not interested in saving inefficient businesses, but it's not robbery, it is just efforts undertaken to increase efficiency. And the ultimate goal is to provide guarantees to the customers that through enlargement the grids will be managed more efficiently at the regional level, and the decentralized zone will be engaged as well. Anyway, this efforts will be discussed yet, and the proposals from the constituent entities, the subject of the Russian Federation will be reviewed, but the ultimate goal is to efficiently use the budget allocations and efficiently managing the money paid by the customers, and set up conditions for the investors to understand whether they will be able to develop in the future. And then we have to understand what are the assets that we are working with. That's why the lobbyists of the territorial grid organizations are concerned, but no problem. All the entities will be offered to still work at the market, but they will have to do that in the most efficient manner. there is a shortage, deficiency of the specialists in this industry at the moment, and the manpower will not be affected. But as far as the legal persons are concerned, they will have to reorganize their work. At least this process has started in Khabarovsk, and I have not heard a single complaint from the customers. Well, the most important thing for the customers is to have guaranteed supply of the energy. Igor, and what's your point of view? And, it's the law. It's still regarding the law on the grid companies. Everyone is looking at this law in terms of delegating all the responsibilities to a big grid company that is allegedly selected by the authorities to be the system forming company. But it's not the case. It's rather related to the responsibility to a major grid company in their area of responsibility, because the major companies have the best competencies. So there is no goal of this law to leave only one company. It's related to the inefficient companies who are just charging the tariffs, but they do not have either the personnel or the capacity to use centralized standby equipment to provide electricity. And from the experience of Rosenergo and other companies, we can see that regional authorities turn to the generating grid companies and seeking assistance, requesting the heat energy or electrical energy supplied to the particular village or township. And there is a business model. When you receive a tariff, you do nothing, you just hire lawyers, and you just keep receiving money and do not deliver. So that situation should be eliminated, and the system company, in this case, is a guarantor of supplies, and the system grid company would be delivering and would be providing the heat and the electrical energy if the other companies fail to deliver. And this framework set up by the law would set up the conditions when the grids not owned by anyone would be included on the balance of the system grid company, and it would address all the other issues related to the smooth provision of the customers. So they request to the legislators to support this initiative. Any wishes to the legislators or government to support to the domestic manufacturers? From the request is something that I have mentioned. It's necessary to establish a program for the development of the industry, because the tariffs are related to the prices of the equipment, and the prices of the equipment depends on the economy of scale. And we should capitalize on the experience of our colleagues from other countries, China, for example. They have huge experience in this industry. Thank you. Concluding, the panelists might be interested to answer it, or the audience. And we have been talking about the energy and any prospects of applying AI, artificial intelligence, to the industry sector. Anybody? Igor? Vladimir? Igor? Okay. I would like to talk about something that has been displayed in today's exhibition. There are many companies, Rossetti, Lenenergo, for example, has been developing the digitization program. We have made quite a good progress, and there are many companies that invested into the information security so that their information system cannot be affected by intrusions, and still there are major stakeholders that are not protected. And we saw that some of the suppliers that have been vendors of the foreign companies have localized their production, and they have been localizing their production. And there is an automated substation that is being constructed in the region, and it includes 90% of the local components. And if we bear with them at the initial phase of their development, we can achieve progress. And right now we have only 1% of the foreign components, and it is mostly microchips. And there is a call center of Rossetti, and there is a chatbot robot. It is machine learning principles that are applied to the chat bot, and it is learning to give customer satisfaction with the answers. So efforts are undertaken not only to reduce the waiting time, but to digitalize it. So that's a true thing. So the chatbot name is Pavel. What is important is for the chatbot to be the first responder and act fast when there is an accident at the grid, at the network. Well, the task was not to give the answers to all the problems, but at least to pinpoint the ways to approach it. I would like to thank you all. And what's good is that the number of the attendees in the beginning was the same as at the end, and I would like to thank the panelists and give a round of applause to them, and that concludes the plenary session. Thank you.